here we go again.
Oh, no, not again.
You've seen it before, haven't you?
Dom, how long have we been doing this?
Once more unto the breach. Dear friends.
Again and again and again until we're both dead.
Hello and welcome to You've Seen It Before, movie reviews with connections in mind. Ralph Breaks the Internet is the 2018 sequel to 2012's Wreck-It Ralph, and is directed by Rick Moore and Phil Johnston, and once again stars the voice talents of John C. Reilly as Wreck-It Ralph and Sarah Silverman as Princess Vanellope. And this time around, through a series of unfortunate events, Princess Vanellope's game Sugar Rush is put out of order, and all of the characters in that game are now homeless. However, a replacement part can be ordered on the internet, and because a Wi-Fi router is now connected through the surge protector that allows all the games to interact with one another, Vanellope and Ralph must now enter the internet in order to find the part and save Princess Vanellope's game. However, as with all things on the internet, nothing is as easy as just going for what you intended to go for. Now, this video review will contain spoilers of Ralph Breaks the Internet, as well as certain other films and TV series. I'll put a full list in the description below, but if you haven't seen Ralph Breaks the Internet yet, or any of the films listed below, and want to wait until you have, come back skip to this point in the video. I'll be doing my spoiler-free review after my spoiler-filled analysis. And once you have seen Ralph Breaks the Internet, come back and rewatch my spoiler-filled analysis and see if you agree with it, see if I missed anything, etc. But with these things in mind, let's begin. So, Ralph Breaks the Internet is essentially a buddy movie in which Vanellope and Wreck-It Ralph have to go on a huge adventure in order to save their Vanellope's home. And of course, Ralph being the lovable doofus in this movie, he's pretty much messing it up every chance he gets. Even when he does something right, he does something to wreck it for his friend in one way or another. There are a lot of movies that are like this. One example that I came up with was the film Tommy Boy with Chris Farley and David Spade, in which Chris Farley plays the son of a brake manufacturer, and the town where this factory is located is entirely dependent on this factory's well-being, and because this factory is needing a large influx of cash in order to survive, Tommy Boy and David Spade's character have to go out and save the company and the town, in essence. But of course, Chris Farley is a lovable doofus, and he ends up making David Spade's life a nightmare, but in the end he somehow managed to pull it out of the fire and save the town with a large influx of cash. Very similar to Ralph Breaks the Internet, where they were able to have to get $27,000 for one steering wheel for the game of Sugar Rush. Ralph Breaks the Internet also features the character of Vanellope going outside of her game, and she's having feelings that since her game is she knows pretty much everything. She doesn't know exactly how a race is going to go through. However, she says that everything is very predictable, and she just wants something new in her life. And this leads her to find the online game Slaughter Race, and and she meets up with one of the game characters in that game, voiced by Gal Gadot, and she strikes up a friendship, and she feels like this is like her perfect new dream in her life. But Wreck-It Ralph is afraid for how his friendship will turn out, and he wants to go back with the way things were, and he thought they had a good thing going, so he tries to sabotage her relationship in order to with Gal Gadot's character in order to get Vanellope back. But of course, that thing doesn't work out, and the moral of the movie is that he has to let her go in order for her to pursue her dream. This is reminiscent of another Disney film that came out in the 80s, known as Oliver and Company. in which the character of Oliver is a kitten who is washed away in a rainstorm in New York City, and he finds a group of renegade dogs and their homeless owner, and he gets a good life at first, but then he finds a little girl in a upscale neighborhood in New York, and they take a bonding to each other, and he feels like there's a good friendship going, and they feel like they can Oliver wants to stay with this little girl, Penny. However, the dogs who found him originally, they don't like the way things were before, and they don't understand that he wants to stay, that Oliver wants to stay with this little girl, so they try to sabotage her. But in the end, of course, other things intervene, and Oliver ends up going with Penny in that way. Finally, the climax of Ralph Breaks the Internet features a virus that replicates the insecurities of Ralph and spreads it throughout the entire internet and almost takes it down. And at one point, all the Ralph clones that are chasing the real Ralph and Vanellope through the internet, they essentially coalesce and make one giant Ralph virus out of all these smaller Ralph viruses, and it's basically a King Kong-esque creature attacking the internet, and it's up to the real Ralph and Vanellope to stop him. And this is reminiscent of a couple of things, mostly the film the Matrix sequels, Matrix Reloaded and Matrix Revolutions, mostly the latter, in which Agent Smith is a program that he essentially breaks the programming of the Matrix, and he makes a whole ton of copies of himself with all the people in the Matrix until it's pretty much the entire Matrix is all Agent Smith copies, and it's up to Neo to stop him. And in the game version of the Matrix sequels, which I believe is called Enter the Matrix, the climax of that game, in that scene where Neo has to face down Agent Smith in the Matrix in order to save it, the Agent Smiths coalesce into a gigantic Agent Smith, in which Neo has to fight in order to defeat him. So those are my main points of comparison for Ralph Breaks the Internet. I'm sure there are others that I may have missed, but probably the main comparison that is going to be made between this movie is that this is pretty much the movie that the Emoji Movie wanted to be. And there's there's sort of an interesting historical comparison to be made here, where there was a movie in the 90s called Gordy, which involves a talking pig trying to go on various adventures, and it didn't do so well. It was a Disney film. However, a short time after that film was released, the film Babe was released, which also featured a talking pig, and it was much better received, and it was a much better movie overall. But when people go back to see the movie Gordy, they think it's essentially a cheap knockoff of Babe, when in fact it isn't, since Gordy came out before Babe. I feel like this is kind of how Ralph Breaks the Internet is going to be seen, where people are going to see the Emoji Movie as a ripoff of Ralph Breaks the Internet, but it isn't, because the Emoji Movie came out last year in 2017, whereas Ralph Breaks the Internet comes out in 2018. However, Ralph Breaks the Internet is a much stronger film overall, and that's why I'd say I would recommend seeing it in theaters. It's just a very heartwarming film as well, much like the first film, Wreck-It Ralph, and it goes into this world of the internet. It has a bunch of references to online culture, but it doesn't hit you over the head with them. That's the main difference between Ralph Breaks the Internet and the Emoji Movie. It puts them in, and it does the commentary in a subtle way. It doesn't beat you over the head with these references. Like, for example, the way that Ralph and Vanellope enter the internet is they're trying to get to eBay in order to buy this steering wheel for Sugar Rush. And the way eBay is set up, it's very creative in its design, and it's handled wonderfully. And as well as all the other sites. There's a YouTube knockoff in this film that is very well done in its design, and the only type thing that I would say does beat you over the head with it, just a little bit, and this is probably where the movie hurts the most, is if you remember in the trailers for Ralph Breaks the Internet, there's a scene in which Vanellope enters the Disney website, and she sees all the Disney stuff that they own, such as Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar, and at one point she enters a room where all the famous Disney princesses are, and they start bonding. It's a great scene, don't get me wrong. However, in the course of this film, it feels like the pacing just kind of brings the film to a screeching halt so that we can have this cute little moment with the and meta commentary on Disney princesses. It's funny stuff, but I feel like that could have been its own movie or a short film outside of this, and I just think that's the part where it just kind of lagged in the beginning. And also, there are a bunch of characters in this film that, while great, initially they're not really developed very well, and the plot relies on characters that aren't developed at all, and I feel like they still work to the film's benefit. However, they don't. I wish they could have been fleshed out just a little bit better. I know the focus is mostly supposed to be on Ralph and Vanellope's relationship. However, I feel like it would have just rounded out the world just a little bit more. They make a comment in the beginning how the internet just goes on forever, and obviously they can't see it all. However, I feel like they should have. They feel like they stopped dead a little bit. They stopped just short of where they could have gone a little bit. Like there are a couple instances where the people on the internet are like these differently designed little avatars as they're walking around the internet. And when something insane happens, like Ralph throwing a screen on someone, you cut back to the real world where someone just suddenly loses their internet connection. That was great. I wish we could have seen a little bit more of that sort of interaction, kind of like what we did with the in the first film, with how actions in the virtual world impact the real world in the arcade. However, it just didn't go quite far enough. That's just my personal opinion. I think overall this film works really well. That's why, but because of those lows, I would say it's good, but those lows just keep it from being great. And that's my main point. It's definitely worth checking out in theaters or wherever you can. And yeah, definitely go check this out. So those are my main thoughts on Ralph Breaks the Internet. Thank you for sticking through this whole thing. If you haven't seen, if you skipped my spoiler-filled analysis, I encourage you to come back when you have seen Ralph Breaks the Internet and rewatch my spoiler analysis and see if I missed anything, if you disagree with anything. I appreciate whatever audience I can get. I'm always looking for ways to improve this channel. And thank you so much for watching. Be sure to look for my reviews coming soon. I believe my next film, unless something comes up in between now and then, my next film review will be for Aquaman, which thanks to the Amazon premiere, I'll be able to see a week early. So look for that coming soon. And yeah, just thank you so much for watching. And just remember, there is nothing new under the sun. And yes, you have seen it.